Guys, a couple of days late in getting on air, but we do feel we've got our technical issues with our software company Ecamm figured out. At least the boys are telling me they can hear me on the other end and that I don't sound like Andre the Giant or the Chipmunk, so to speak. So we look like we're good to go for tonight's show. Welcome, everybody. We're glad to have you once again, along with my two good friends, Troy McKenzie, T-Mac in Coburg, and Troy Bladesy in Hammonds Plains, Nova Scotia. Gentlemen, we worked through everything, but we're back, and we're going to start. We're going to jump right in. One thing I would keep an eye on, you guys, I don't have the Tampa-Houston game, which we're going to talk about in a bit. The Rays, exciting Game 5. If something goes on during the course of the game, don't be afraid to interject that in there. So we are going to start with Week 5 of the National Football League, which has gone past us, but we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit and how it rides into week number 6. And then from that, we're going to talk about T-Mac, who has this week the opportunity to give us the power rankings, top 5 power rankings for the show. So we'll get a little bit more discussion into that for football. Then we'll talk about the MLB playoffs. And then in odds and ends, we will talk about the NCAA and a little bit about the Montreal Canadiens Toronto Maple Leaf game Saturday night. And should pros know the rules? So, gentlemen, last week, big week. Obviously, our Patriots go 5-0. I'll tell you something, though. That first half, I was a little bit, I think it was 12 to 7 or 12 to 6 or something like that. And Brady didn't seem happy. But end of the day, they got the win. Brady has 3 touchdowns, and all is perfect in Patriot land. Troy McKenzie, T-Back, do you agree?
On the defensive side of the ball, I don't think anybody could have expected a better start than the Patriots have had. Offensively, I think we talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago. The offensive line is still a work in progress, and the Bills showed that. And the Redskins had more of a pass rush than I expected them to. And in that first half, it was, again, more of Brady just doing everything he could to not be sacked, still getting sacked, being rushed. And I think at halftime they figured some things out. In Dante Scarnecchia, we trust. And I hope that either he will be able to coach up some of these guys that have only been with him a few weeks, or Trader Bill, before the deadline, can go out and grab somebody else. Trent Williams in Washington is sitting there, and with the state of the Washington team right now, I think all bets are off with what they may decide to do or not. So I'm feeling really good about them. But God, I would love to see a performance tonight. The Giants have an okay pass rush where Brady has time back there to do more of the things he did in the second half. But I feel really good.
Right on. Well, Blasey, there's talk obviously going on with things not working out with Antonio Bryan, and based on some of the comments that Tom Brady has made this last week, there's obviously a concern with the passing game in terms of him feeling comfortable with certain guys. Apparently, there's some talk out there of Stephon Diggs in Minnesota. We're hearing AJ Green in Cincinnati. Is that pass game in need of some infusion, do you think? Or was, last Sunday just kind of Brady needing some time to get in sync with things?
Well, I think the pass game's always, you never can have too many for sure. The reason why they, signed Antonio Brown and all of his baggage to start with. But I think we do this every year, Duke. And, we've just been kind of fortunate this year that we've had such a soft schedule to start. That we are 5-0, but this happens every year in September. So a lot of times, the offense doesn't play that well early on, and it's happening again. They're not going to open up the whole playbook against these shitty teams like Washington and these guys. They know they can. They probably thought they would have had a little bit easier time with them, and you found out what happened once the second half came. They opened her up a little bit, got the lead, got the cushion. I know that's easy to say, but it happens every year. So we panic on these guys, and when it matters, that's when they open it up. And they say Brady looks a little bit scared to get hit, or throwing the ball away a little too quick and things like that. Well, of course, he doesn't want to. What's the point of getting hurt against these, the dead skins here? It's he can play 75% and still beat these guys by 30 points. So I don't think we can take a whole lot away from it at that point. We got tonight, we got next week against the Jets. And then it starts getting a little bit tougher. But I know it's a homer thing to say, but it's been proven time and time and time again. So, I'm not panicking for sure. But, like Troy said, the offensive line is definitely a problem. And hopefully they can start gelling together as they, start playing together a little bit more. But I'm not panicking, but, if they get Stephon Diggs or whoever comes through that door, it's worth a shot if they think it's worth a shot. It wouldn't be bad to get one more guy in there. And don't forget, we still got N'Keal Harry on IR that's going to be back. After week 8, it's a rookie, but it's body, and he had some, he did well in preseason when he played. So,
right.
I don't think it's panic. We're 5-0. It's not panic time.
And I think one difference, Bladesy, and maybe just the anti-panic we have. The difference in watching the KC game and seeing Mahomes put himself in danger, seeing Mahomes doing that stuff, and him needing to do that in order for them to win. Compared to our guy who's casually throwing the ball away and taking it like we're spoiled and in a good place, but it's so striking watching those two games, and you're wincing watching this guy who could be the face of the NFL for the next 10 years, putting himself at risk, and there's old man Brady wisely throwing it away and doing the stuff, and whether we panic or not doesn't matter. He's looking after himself for later. It's interesting.
And the whole key is, they want to get home field advantage in the playoffs. And with Kansas City losing the other night, gives us a little bit of a push. But that being said, if everything goes the same, it's going to be that game against Kansas City that's going to be the telltale. If they beat us, even though we're tied, they get the tiebreaker. So, but they were afraid to go into Kansas City last year. So.
As long as old man Brady practiced the slide this week and his knee brace doesn't.
That was scary, man. That was scary. Did you see that, dude?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Oh my God! Like when that stopped short, it looked like he tore every ligament in his knee. Luckily it's freaking Robo Man there, Robo leg. Man, what a brace he got on.
The Jared Stidham era was looking very flashing through my mind as I'm watching that. I'm like, oh shit. But speaking of KC, there's obviously those are, that's the team that we're concerned about the most as Patriot fans. Anything can happen in playoffs, but you just go off of how things currently are. Mackenzie, if you were a Kansas City Chief fan, you've watched your team barely get by the Detroit Lions on the road, mind you, and now a loss at home against Indianapolis. In that game against Indianapolis, is it more and let's keep in mind they did have some injuries going into that, but so didn't the Colts on the defensive end of the side. So, if you're a Chief fan, what are you thinking? Are you concerned at this point, or is it just it's a long season and there's going to be moments?
Concern is different levels of concern. I think KC can comfortably be in that, barring a true injury to Mahomes, they're in the playoffs. So whereas we as Patriots know that or assume that they're just going to be working things out to get there, KC should be feeling similarly, but their coach is still the guy that does questionable things late in the games. So that's a question. Their run defense could be, oh my God, like Marlon Mack is good, and the one side of the Indianapolis Colts line is really good, but I worry about the Chiefs just being able to run on. When you talk about blueprints for other teams, that's being written. And when you think of time of possession and stuff, a two-legged Mahomes is going to have pressure on him to use the time he has to score and come back. A one-legged Mahomes is that much. So I don't know. It's their offense is still there. That Hardman kid. When Tyreek Hill comes back and him and Kelsey, they're loaded on offense. Yeah. But it's not going to matter a whole lot if the other team's going to be going through your defense like Swiss cheese. That's the difference I think with the Pats this year is when I remember the early years and how much confidence we had in the defense. And Brady, he needed to get 17, 20 points and we felt good. That's not the case with the Chiefs. And Mahomes has one touchdown pass in the last two games. If he's not putting up 4, God, that defense isn't something as a Chiefs fan I'd be very excited about.
No, and Bladesy, I don't know about you, but I'm watching that Colts game. I don't know how much of that you got to watch, but I almost have to think that the Colts kind of took a bit of a page out of what the Patriots did last year in the AFC Championship game. Ball control. And take your chances with that. We're going to pound and ground, work as much time off the clock, and we'll take our chances that way. And it seems like that is the formula that's happening. Can Andy Reid make the adjustment to that, do you think?
It's hard to make the adjustment if he doesn't have the personnel to do it, right? I mean, if he doesn't have the run defense, I mean, everybody knew that was the problem with the Chiefs coming in, and they just figured they'd be able to outscore everybody. The thing about the last two games is, let's slow the roll of the making that mustard yellow jacket for Mahomes just yet there and put him in Canton right yet with a couple good years or a year and a half. Yeah. Like, man, oh man, these guys. But no, I mean, the Chiefs, they probably thought, they thought they were going to have a pretty big challenger in the Chargers this year, and that hasn't proven to be the case so far. Chargers got their own problems with injuries and things like that. So I think the Chiefs really have a little bit of cushion, kind of like the Patriots do. I mean, the Raiders are, somehow 3-2. But
how about them Oakland Raiders? 3-2, man. I didn't think they'd win a freaking game this year.
Knock 3 times if you win me. But anyway, but no, I mean Tyreek Hill's been out, one of the most explosive receivers in the game, on and off the field. We'll leave it at that. And Watkins looks like he's going to be out for a couple of weeks now, but I don't think the Chiefs got anything to worry about. They were always number 2 in the AFC coming in. I don't think anything happened that changed that right yet, but we'll see.
Right on. Well, the other game that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit, and if you guys had something else on something, by all means interject, but a week ago was the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. And that was quite an entertaining game, to say the least. Comes down to Greg Zuerlein obviously missing just right. LA, have people figured them out? Did the Patriots kind of expose them last year in the Super Bowl, do you think, T-Mac?
I don't know. I mean, Russell Wilson's really good. Mm-hmm. We have to remember that. I mean, I don't think he's thrown an interception yet this year.
Right.
Their defense was always good. So I think Seattle's a legitimately good game. And remember, the score was 30-29 or what, it was still a really close game. I have faith in the Rams. I have faith. I mean, Gurley's probably not going to go this weekend, so we'll see if the buzz around Brown and the rookie Henderson is something. But no, I think the Rams are. I think there's too much talent there to count them out. We'll see, I guess. But I think Seattle's better than maybe we thought. Russell Wilson. I hate the thing that people say about he doesn't get any credit. He gets tons of credit, but he's just playing at the top of his type of game right now, and they've got a defense that may not be the Legion of Boom before, but they're good too. So
right on. So Bladesy, the Rams are going to be facing the Niners this weekend. One of the key games of the week. I think we can agree. Going to be a stellar. This is the test that I think everybody's waiting for on this whole Niner thing. I mean, they came out of Monday night putting a shit kicking on Cleveland, and Cleveland's making me look like a complete fool on the season so far. They're not coming nigh close to anything I think people who had support for them was going to do. But still, nonetheless, the Niners are 4-0 and they lead the NFC West. Is it a case of they're probably a little bit of luck here? They're catching LA at the right time, or do you expect to see a whole different LA Ram team in this game coming up with so much on the line?
No. I think I think because they lost last week, the Rams, they're not gonna take this team lightly. Not that they would in division game undefeated, but any chance that the 49ers had of jumping in there with them not ready, I think the Rams are going to turn it around. To be honest with you, I think Garoppolo is finally going to face a decent team. He really hasn't faced a big defense yet. I mean, but still, I mean, San Francisco's, it's been their running game, right? Their running game is what's been when they averaging like 200 yards on the ground or something. So, that's crazy. But the Rams are still the Rams. They're not as good as last year. They maybe have a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover, but they're. I got faith the Rams will turn it around and really gum up that division a little bit. Depending on what Seattle does going into Cleveland, that one's going to be a tough one too for them. I think, even though Cleveland shit the bed last week. I don't think that one's going to be a pushover for anybody, that's for sure. So I think the Rams, this is a big test for them and big test for the Niners. I mean, like I say, that's one of the marquee games of the week for sure.
Yeah. Well, if they can walk into LA and pull out a win there and remain 5-0, geez, I'll tell you, then I think some legitimacy comes to their season that they're having so far. Still a ways to go. I mean, we're not even at the halfway point, but we're creeping there little by little, and we're at a point where you really got to start making some true evaluations of some of these teams. So we're going to move on from...
Can I just have one last one, Duke?
Yes, sir.
Christian McCaffrey. I think back of the white running backs that have been stars, and I'm John Riggins, Mike Alstott, has there ever been a white running back that is doing non-bulldozer type things and just he legitimately, and I know it's part ways it's early and part ways it's significant, he is an amazing player. Mm-hmm. He could be the league MVP, and he's a little fast white guy. Yeah. That is such a unicorn for the topical term. It's pretty neat to see this happen, because I think after his rookie season, people thought, what was all the fuss about? And even more so doing it with Kyle Allen as the quarterback. Part of me thinks, my God, the team should be stacking, their number one goal should be stopping McCaffrey, and he has 230, 240 yards from scrimmage, 3 touchdowns. I think that's a pretty cool story that's being written by this little shifty white guy.
Well, if anybody should know anything about little shifty white guys, we should know about it in New England, because we've had a couple of them. We've had, obviously with Julian Edelman probably being the most famous of them all, but, Danny Amendola was not too bad, maybe not as shifty as those two. And who was the guy that went to Carolina? Crap, I'm forgetting his name.
Wes Welker.
Well, there was Welker, but no, the guy they had last year. He was at the Super Bowl. Hogan. So
yeah, but none of them were running backs.
No, that's true. That's true. That is a good
really, the only guy I would say would be Woodhead. But you know what? He wasn't really. He's more of a pass catching running back. McCaffrey does both equally well, right? I mean, he runs up the middle. He runs between tackles as well as he catches passes and stuff. So to have the whole package, definitely. I don't know if you know too many that would be doing that.
Right. Alrighty, gentlemen, well, we're going to move along. This week is T-Mac's turn to produce the power rankings, our top 5 power rankings of the National Football League. And so we're going to let Mac start. Last week when we did it with Blazy, we started at 5. I don't know why we started at 5, thinking we were going to have some kind of a drum roll or not, because it was pretty anticlimactical at that point. So I think we've all kind of agreed that starting at number 1 and let's have the drum roll for 4 and 5 might be a bit more logical and stuff. So, Mac, take the floor. Start with number 1. Surprise, surprise.
It's got to be the Patriots, and I hope that unless you're the most diehard Pats hater, you would have a difficult time not putting them up in the 1 or 2 spot. So the Pats, they haven't lost. You can say their schedule has been that great, but that defense is just something that if I was a Pats hater, I would not be very, very excited about facing them with that defense this year, knowing that the offense hasn't even started clicking yet. So.
Right. So, Blades, are you willing to take a shot at him on this one, or is this
we'll see more time for another one.
Okay. All right. At number 2, Mac, you have selected who?
The Saints.
The Saints. And what went into bringing the Saints up to number 2?
Well, I was torn. I kind of wanted to keep Kansas City there, but having watched that game for the broadcast and seeing that defense is oh my God. And so when I'm thinking Teddy Bridgewater is making that offense hum along, Breeze is talking about coming back sooner than expected, and they've got a legitimate defense as well. Marcus Lattimore doing his best Deion Sanders, don't throw in my side of the field impression. I just think they're the class of the NFC, and Breeze, in some ways, I think of some of those times when Brady misses a game here, not Brady, but other quarterbacks, he hasn't going to have absorbed the hits. He will have recovered from his injury, but the rest of his body will be fine. So I think the Saints will be dangerous with it. They haven't had a defense.
Right.
In all their successful times, they haven't had a legitimate defense, and now they do. So that was my thinking.
Right on. Okay, Bladesy, I'll let you kind of counter with that if you feel that's not the right choice. But let me ask you this question. If Teddy Bridgewater, we'll say if he gets one or two more starts, we'll say 2, and he continues to do what he's doing, obviously he's not going to, Breeze ain't going to be set on the bench for Teddy Bridgewater, but the question is, has Teddy Bridgewater now shown enough that maybe a starting gig is back in the works for him with another team, do you think?
I would think so. I mean, shit, have you seen some of these quarterbacks in this league? I mean, I would say there's quite a few teams that could use Teddy Bridgewater right now.
But he was one of those quarterbacks, though, Bladesy, at one point.
That's true, but I mean, before he got hurt, he had a great year there in Minnesota, right? So, I mean, he really only lost his job when he got hurt, and then really just didn't get, I mean, that was a pretty bad injury that he had, too. It's taken him a long time to kind of get back. But, Teddy Bridgewater, like I said, the Saints haven't missed a beat, really. So, but, I mean, I won't say I got a qualm with it. Personally, I would keep Kansas City at 2, just because I just think they've, obviously they lost, and I just think they've done enough. I mean, it's close between Kansas City and New Orleans. Nobody could say one's wrong and one's right. But personally, for now, I would keep Kansas City at 2 and put New Orleans at 3. But, who knows?
Well, speaking of number 3, that is where T-Mac went. He went with the Chiefs at number 3. So, in light of what Bladesy just said, T-Mac, about maybe, the argument's there for Kansas City to be still number 2, you opted to go 3. Is it more to do with that New Orleans defense performance, or was it the lack of defensive performance by Kansas City that helped in that decision?
I think a combination of the two. And maybe as well, and it's such an easy thing, but to hear the criticism of Kansas City's coach, I think New Orleans has a better coach as well. So when I did the poll, I'm kind of looking at those 3 things, and then that was kind of if our top 5, if your power poll is the teams that you think are eventually going to win it, I like New Orleans and the guy making the calls more than I like KC. So if that's the tiebreaker as well, I think that those were kind of the things. KC obviously is right there. That offense, if as long as Mahomes is standing and when Tyreek Hill gets back, they're going to be able to win most shootouts. I just think the defense, they were hoping to have a better defense, and it may not be so.
No, but there's still plenty of time left in the season for them to make the corrections that obviously need to be made there. Now, whether that'll happen, we will wait and see. All right, so moving off of the Chiefs, we go to number 4, and you chose who at number 4?
Green Bay Packers.
He went with the Green Bay Packers. Now, these next 2 picks, always like a guy who likes to kind of go out on the limb there a little bit more than the norm. So you do know these next 2 picks could get a little bit more scrutiny, but I'm going to let you defend your pick at number 4 with Green Bay. Has Aaron Rodgers finally figured it all out this season, or is that defense the big reason for them as well, or the running game?
I think I had a bit of a defensive theme to a lot of my picks.
Yeah.
I think Rodgers has always figured it out. I just he's really good. It doesn't hurt that they have a running game as well. With days since the pick, I'm starting to wonder if Dallas is as good as we thought they were. Their first 3 games were against teams that weren't that great, so we'll have to see as the season goes on. Maybe this Green Bay win over Dallas wasn't. But I considered that to be a big one, kind of a message-sending game. And the defense, again, I think if Green Bay has a better defense, it allows less pressure on the offense to to pull wins out of their asses, kind of thing. So, I mean, in this area of the poll, there's lots of teams you could put in there. So a little recency bias, maybe with that game on Sunday night. Before we get to that fifth pick, I feel a little bit like those SB Nation writers that get paid next to nothing, and their editors put unfair constraints on them. And like when your boss is telling you to make a power poll pick before the Monday night game, and then rips you for the outcome. But we'll get to that.
So, Blazy, you going to challenge T-Mac on his fourth pick, or are you fairly confident with that, or do you think he could have went another direction?
No, I did my 5 before I saw his, and I 100% agree with him. I think the Packers did enough to definitely jump my 5th pick and obviously knock the Cowboys to the curb that I had at number 4 last week. And that was just a shit kicking. Green Bay without Devontae Adams in Dallas, and just they just ran over him. Aaron Jones had the game of his life, obviously, but that's the key. It's the defense for Green Bay. They haven't had a defense in a long time, and if they got a defense, obviously, it's not going to hurt. So I 100% agree. I think the Packers definitely have done enough over this season so far to put themselves at 4, number 2 in the NFC right now.
Okay, fair enough. All right, T-Mac, drum roll for number 5, and I have to say I'm a bit surprised with this one considering some of the other teams that are out there, but you're always pretty good at giving an explanation of your pick. So number 5 you went with?
Houston Texans.
The Houston Texans. Now, Houston, are they not? They got what, two losses? Yes, they got 2 losses. So you have a team with 2 losses at number 5. Yep. And you have an undefeated team out there, and you have a couple teams at 4-1. So how did you arrive at the Texans having that 5th spot?
Few reasons. Part of it, one was Deshaun Watson. If he's given the time, he might scare me as much as Mahomes does. He truly is a gifted quarterback that can do things with his legs. If Will Fuller becomes a wide receiver of note, of someone who's going to make defenses think twice alongside DeAndre Hopkins, that's a receiving duo that few teams are going to be able to match. Carlos Hyde has somehow decided to live up to some of the hype that he failed to do with 2 or 3 other teams before now. And Duke Johnson is a nice quote, like he's kind of James White light to me in a lot of ways. And part of it, too, is I think that defense, losing a guy like Clowney clearly hurt, but I think J.J. Watt and some of the others are about to say, wait a second, we've still got a good defense here as well. I think their path to the playoffs should be if Jacksonville continues, like Jacksonville, Tennessee, like that. They're good teams, but I see them being able to get out of it. And, my God, that offense could be just as prolific as some of the other big-name offenses. And I guess I just felt when I looked at the other teams, there was as much there for them to get excited about as some of the other teams along the line. It was close. There were a couple of others that I looked at, and the Pittsburgh Steelers clearly with 1 win. Falls to the 5th spot. But I know that'll be part of your counter, so I'll leave that one to you.
All right, Blazy, he takes the Texans at number 5. Please tell me you're at least going to give some kind of rebuttal to this pick here, or do you guys just exchange notes before we do the show?
No, I mean, I like the Texans. I think the Texans are probably top 8. Everything that he said is correct. Their offensive line is still a little scary and, could get Deshaun Watson killed at some point. But, what they did here this last week, putting up 53 points, and, their defense is good. I mean, their coach is still suspect. One of those Bill Belichick disciples that hasn't really done what, maybe not did listen. Anyway, but no, for me, I mean, it's close. I had Seattle in there last week. They didn't do anything to get themselves knocked out. I'm going to keep Seattle at number 5. They beat the Rams. I mean, albeit on a missed field goal, but they played well enough to win. I think obviously, San Francisco has to be, right there, 6 or 7 for sure. But we'll see what they're made of this week. If they go into LA and beat the Rams this week, obviously they may be taking somebody's spot in that top 5, but happens. But I mean, like Troy said, there's a bunch of teams there that you could put in as at that 5th spot, and really probably 6 or 7 teams there. So, but I'll stick with Seattle for now. Give them one more week there.
Right on. Well, I guess
I gotta say one thing about the 49ers. That Bosa, if he's playing like that on the games that I'm not watching, holy crap! Like he was just reminded me of J.J. Watt when J.J. Watt was dominating the games. He was just on every play doing, and his thing with pretending to plant the flag was just comedy gold. I just loved it. So,
and I will say the best part about it was it was either in the Atlantic Bowl or the CFC. My defensive end, I think, was hurt, and I ended up picking up Nick Bosa and got 18 points. That was
nice. Well, with regards to that, it was funny. I was listening to Golick and Lingo. They're on ESPN. We get the feed in the early hours here in Edmonton on TSN 1260. And the first comment they made when they came on the air, and they're like, "There is a football god in heaven. We now have the offensive version of Rob Gronkowski on defense in the National Football League." And it was pretty comical the way they were kind of comparing him and his kind of his character with how Gronk can be at times. Just having he was very, very coy about the whole thing and stuff like that, where Baker Mayfield and everything is concerned. With regards to the 49ers, yeah, for a 5-0 team, I can see 4-0. Excuse me. Yes, the schedule hasn't been great. I guess we can say that about a bunch of teams, including our own. But to crack that, the one team I think I would have challenged you with on the Texans is Indy, because they also are 3-2, right? And with that win in Kansas City, in my opinion, kind of trumps a little bit more of what Houston has going there. And I think Indy's going to be hanging around for a shot at the wild card, if not the division. And that's going to be a close race the whole way through. Jacksonville loses a key game that could have kept them in the mix. And then Tennessee lost to Buffalo. 4-1, Buffalo. Any consideration to Buffalo at all? Because you were talking about the theme of your power rankings being mostly on defense. Is that Buffalo offense not good enough to warrant them a spot in the top 5?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
No.
Frank Gore has to be Hall of Fame Frank Gore every game, and Allen has to eliminate the mistakes, and we haven't seen either of those things yet. So
right on. Definitely, schedule has been a favor to them. So anyway, that concludes the top 5 for this week. Next week, guys,
I'll let you Jack, before you get going. Houston's up 4-0 after 1.
That's
the Tyler Glasnow experiment does not work.
He's still in there, but
wow, 4-0. And who's starting? Cole?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
That might be 3 more runs than they need.
That could be. It could be. Okay, so we'll finish up with the NFL on this real quick. Coming into week number 6, obviously we have a game of interest here in a little while with our Patriots taking on the Giants in New England. What are you looking for out of that game? Does the Daniel Jones era do you think that makes this game a bit more intriguing? Are you looking for, the Giants to bring a little bit of competition to this game, or you think Brady and company are going to put an exclamation point on this and show the young man what life is really all about?
Who's he going to throw to?
No Barkley, no Shepard, no Ingram.
Yeah.
Golden might be out.
Golden's out too.
Yeah.
There's a third string running back. I got Golden Tate's the top wide receiver. I think it's pretty ugly. I mean, I think any chance Jones had of doing something. I mean, if he does something with this crew, he's done something for sure. So.
I just hate the Giants so much and shitty.
Can't beat them bad enough. Can't beat them bad enough. Put 50 on them, as far as I'm concerned.
50, and Brady should still be in there throwing.
What's that?
If they're up by 50 in the fourth quarter, I still want Brady in there throwing.
That's what I don't know if you listen to Cousin Sal, the degenerate trifecta there, the Against All Odds Cousin Sal podcast. But anyway, they said, Belichick's probably going to try to, maybe knock Daniel Jones out just so he gets one more shot at Eli before he retires. All a joke, of course. I'm sure they're not going to try to hurt any quarterbacks or anything. But
well, you got to send me
it
a
was
link.
holding, Blazey. It was holding on the Tyreek catch. It was holding.
50 never calls.
One of you guys got to send me the link to that podcast. You guys talk about it all the time. I'm not a huge Bill Simmons guy, but I wasn't
a skip. Not Bill Simmons. That's just Cousin Sal. But.
Just Cousin Sal. Oh, okay.
You wouldn't like it gambling, but the Bill Simmons one Sunday nights, Monday mornings, where they guess the lines is pretty interesting.
Right. I have to give you a little footnote to Cousin Sal's show on Fox. The host, Rachel Bonetta.
Yes.
My boss's secretary was her mother, or is her mother. She's retired.
Nice. Yeah. Nice. She's from Cali, right?
She's from Peterborough.
Oh, she's from Peterborough. Okay.
Yeah. And she's funny. You follow her on Twitter? She's hilarious.
Yeah, I wish we don't get the, what's it called, Lock It in Canada, unfortunately, but sounds like it'd be a funny show.
Yeah, she's really good.
One last thing on the NFL, T-Mac. Houston and Kansas City are hooked up this weekend. Is your Houston still going to be, do you think I'll have them in my top 5 power rankings next week?
Where are they playing again?
In Kansas City. Kansas City going to lose 2 in a row at home?
Well, we'll see what kind of limp Patrick Mahomes has. I think Bladesy pointed out that as much as we make fun of Kansas City's coach, Bill O'Brien isn't necessarily blowing us away with his coaching acumen. So anything's possible. But if Deshaun Watson's allowed to stay standing, I don't see any problem with them scoring a shitload of points on Kansas City. So it'll be on Mahomes to be able to do the same.
Right on.
There could be a very upset group of fans in KC, and that would be just fine with me.
That's right. All right, so that concludes our look at the NFL for this past week, and everything went well. So, okay, moving along. As advertised, the Major League Baseball playoffs are just about wrapping up tonight. I was hoping that this game going on was going to be a little bit closer. 4-0 in the first. Of course, can't take nothing away from Tampa Bay.
4-1 now, dude. 4-1 now.
Okay.
Tampa Bay just had a home run off Cole. Of course, after you said it's probably 3 more runs than he needed. Boom, first pitch, home run.
Gotcha. All right, well, let's start with the National League, gentlemen. As we know, both series went to Game 5 yesterday. We'll start with the Cardinals and Braves. I don't imagine we're going to be too long on this, other than to say that Brian McCann, finally, he announced after the game last night that he's calling it a career and time to go home. You got to like Brian McCann. I mean, if you're, for us as Red Sox fans, Pedroia, all that kind of stuff. Brett Gardner, if you're a Yankee guy. I mean, those kind of guys are gritty, and so wasn't Brian McCann. He did get a world championship with Houston, which is good to see, especially for a fellow catcher. I always have a soft spot for them. But could anybody believe what happened in that first inning? Like, that was one for the ages. Like, people were leaving the building after the first inning. So, did you guys catch that, the first inning of that thing, or no?
I turned it on. It was 10-0 in the first inning. So the kids were like, "What is this?" I'm like, well, we're not going to watch this very long. Funny part was, especially this day and age, they scored 10 runs, didn't have a home run.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. Yeah.
Well, and it was kind of one of those, anything that could go wrong would go wrong. Like the pass ball that McCann missed and took forever to get to. Like, just, it was a comedy of errors and fluky and...
Well, I mean, the whole thing turned. I mean, you don't want to blame it on one guy, but it's a 1-0 game, and there's a ball hit sharply to Freeman. It would have been a double play, and he just boots it. And obviously, floodgates opened after that. You don't want, but just something like that could have changed that whole game around. But
yes,
I think my takeaway from the series, Duke, and getting back to the catcher thing is, and I know Yadier Molina has received lots of accolades, but holy crap, he's putting together one hell of a career. And I don't know where in the end he's going to rank all time, but he's going to be very near the top for longevity of the career and still at the end performing at like maybe even better with the bat than he was during what you would call his prime years.
Well, Yachty kind of reminds me a bit about Dwight Evans in terms of his offense. It seems like as he struggled earlier on in his career, and then at about the halfway point and onward here, he seems to have really, picked it up with his bat and stuff. But that's the hard thing about ranking catchers all time, and I guess it's a lot depends on your own personal criteria. We all know Hall of Fame stuff is all about more about offense than it is about defense, but that's one of those positions like goaltender in hockey. The catcher spot you're not always looking for big offense from there. If you got a good receiver that can handle that pitching staff and max that thing out, he can hit a $190, and you're okay with that, right? Yeah, Molina's coming. He's having quite a career, and if I had to really stop and think about it, I can't see him not being in the top 10 all time. I think he's right on that 10-9 area, and if I really looked harder at his the numbers and stuff, who knows where he goes from there. But you got to give that man props, because St. Louis probably is right now the most consistent franchise. It's like they're in it every year. Like the Red Sox had some years where they finished in last place. The Yankees went through a run where they didn't make the playoffs. But St. Louis, man, it's a testament to that organization. And I think Molina plays a big role in it, because I think they're able to make moves around what he brings to the table and stuff. So
you even said that before the series, Duke, about the Cardinals, and you never can count those guys out, man, and they proved it again, right? And the Braves, I hate to say karma's a bitch, but you got guys like Acuna acting like assholes out there. You know what? He got what was coming to him, and so good on the Cardinals. I think it's going to be a nice series coming up, and who knows what will happen.
Right on.
And bold moves with the Cardinals too. Like they didn't need to trade for Paul Goldschmidt. If they hadn't gone and made a big move like that, people would have still thought they were a good team. But they're willing to, they're an interesting organization that builds from within and still makes really interesting moves to beef things up. So it'd be a good team to be a fan of.
An interesting article came out today. I didn't really dig great deep into it, so I'm not sure when this happened. But there's a rumor there, or a confirmed one, that the Blue Jays were offered Jack Flaherty for Josh Donaldson at one point. So, I mean, you can tell that St. Louis was really in the market for a corner guy, right? Yeah. First base or third. And it kind of makes sense now. You can understand why they went at Goldschmidt, because if that's true, and they made the effort for Donaldson, who definitely would have been cheaper, right? And as we see, Donaldson came into the National League with Atlanta, and he's had a bit of a renaissance this past year. So, yeah. Moving along, not much more we can say about that one, other than it should be an interesting National League Championship Series, because last night, unless you stayed up and watched the late innings, and I didn't, felt kind of bad, but I had to get up at 1 for work, the Washington Nationals, perhaps one of the most dramatic wins in divisional play in the history of the game, come back and beat the vaunted Los Angeles Dodgers. Wadesy, what did you think? Were you to bed as well as I was at that hour, or did you stay up to watch it to the conclusion?
Of course I was to bed. First thing I did when I got up was check out the scores for sure, and then watched the shortened version, actually. But, I mean, we all, I think, well, except for you, Duke, because you picked all the upsets.
Hey!
Picked up all the upsets. He's going to take credit. But, no, I mean, I had the Dodgers in 5, but I think we all said that, if one of those wildcard teams happened to have a chance to win, it would be Washington, more because of their 3 big pitchers. And, it ended up being that it was the Dodger bullpen that kind of imploded. And but Strasburg, after starting out a little bit slow, kind of like Scherzer did in that wildcard game, he picked it up, turned it around, and kept them in it. And Washington just clawed back just like they did in the wild card game against Minnesota or Milwaukee. You got to give them credit there. And Walker Buehler was pitching his ass off, and they finally chipped away at him. Kershaw comes in there in the seventh for relief. Up 3-1 with the tying run on base, and comes in there and strikes out Eaton. You're like, well, this is it. It's over. There's no way. With the starter coming in there in the middle of the inning, you think that would be an issue. Well, then Kershaw comes back in the top of the eighth, start the inning, and gives up the first 2 home runs to tie the game. And after that, it's kind of it's got to be deflating for their guy out there. And we know in the 10th, Howie Kendrick hits the grand slam, which put the nail in. And there's obviously a lot of question marks, a lot of people pointing the finger at Dave Roberts, and obviously Duke as Red Sox fans will always love Dave Roberts for what he did in 2004. But you obviously got to, if you're going to take the accolades, you got to take the GOAT, or if you're going to be the GOAT, you got to be the GOAT kind of thing. So did he leave Joe Kelly in there too long? Obviously hindsight's 20/20, but in the end, Washington, they won the game, and the Dodgers go home very disappointed after going to the World Series the last couple of years and never did win. And I mean, they played Houston, they played the Red Sox, they played better teams and got beat. And maybe this was the year they thought they were going to turn it around. Obviously, not getting there. It's probably tough for those guys, but.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mac, I don't know how much of the game you watched in that, so you can offer up your what you thought and what happened and everything. But is this a case where wholesale changes has to be made in Los Angeles, or do you think it's just a case of tweaking some things? Will Roberts be shown the door as a result? Because you can't, for a team that's invested so much money, they definitely haven't gotten the end result that they want. So, I mean, what happens from here? Do they stand pat and go at it again, or is there a lot of change going to happen in Dodgerland?
I don't know. It's the Dodgers recently have been like the Pats without the Super Bowls. They're there every year. They're just they've built. They got so much young talent like that. They, especially on offense and even the arms. So I mean, Hill is going to need to be replaced. There may be some tweaks. It's the type of thing. If there has to be a sacrificial lamb, Roberts makes the most sense because the lineup is still solid. I think of a couple other thoughts is the Nationals management must be feeling pretty good that they allowed Harper to go, and here they are in the playoffs going to the divisional final. That's pretty cool. Rendon is on his way to making one boatload of cash, and it's I don't know. Can it be a feel good like someone like Steven Strasburg, who is almost like he peaked so early, and now he's pitching so well, and he's kind of lost behind Scherzer. And for Scherzer to come and pitch that in, like they're if Tampa Bay doesn't, I mean, I hate the Yankees and Houston's Houston. If Tampa Bay doesn't somehow come back, the Nationals kind of my feel good story to. There's a lot of good storylines there. The bullpen still scares the hell out of me. When a Blue Jays cast-off that was picked up for nothing is going out there in high-leverage situations, like, holy crap. But there's a lot of good things happening in Washington.
Yeah. Well, the thing about that, with you're referencing Hudson, environment makes a big difference, too.
Yeah.
In a guy's, the way he feels about things and courage and stuff like that. Being in Toronto, obviously, going through what they're going through with the rebuild. It's kind of tough there, but you get with a team that has a legit shot, it definitely is going to make a difference. So, gentlemen, we do know that is going to be the NLCS.
T-Mac, just one thing, dude, before we leave it. You buried the lead, man. You buried the lead. This is the second time in franchise history that the franchise goes to the NLCS.
I didn't bury the lead. Some wounds don't need to be reopened.
The XXO. But they did put that on there. I was like, there you go, 1981.
I think there's a part of me that chooses not to watch the games because I hate the Expos references.
If they just didn't reference it, just pretended they started before you'd be happy.
Where is Moises Alou? Tim Raines. Andre.
Rogers.
Would you
Steve
like
Rogers
another?
battered before Captain America, damn it. Steve Rogers was an ace.
Would you like one more minute to get this completely out of your system?
No, I'm the 12 steps program has been working so well, and some asshole in Hammond's Plains has to do that.
Let's on.
Right on. All right, Bladesy. All right, Bladesy. We do know that this is going to be our National League Championship Series, St. Louis, Washington. Who's going to the World Series, and in how many games is it going to take them to get there?
I hate to do it. I had the Cardinals, like I said, at the start of the season playing Houston. But you know what? I'm going to change my tune here, and I think the Nationals have got something going on. You know, these couple of comebacks, and I mean, their top three pitchers will match up against anybody. Not necessarily match up with Houston top three, but pretty darn close as anybody can get.
Yeah.
Rendon and Soto, you know, they're quite the punch there in the middle of the lineup for sure. So I'm going with the Nationals in. I can't go 7, so let's do it in what? Well, is it 2-3-2? Probably 2-3-2, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably going to have to be in St. Louis, and we'll go 6. Nationals in 6.
Okay. Well, T-Mac, are you going to drink the Kool-Aid with Bladesy, or are you just going to be spiteful and say, no, them Cardinals, they're just too good. They're going back to the World Series again?
Well, I made my pick in advance because I knew you were going to ask me, so I wouldn't get influenced. And damn it, if I didn't say Washington in 6 as well. So I'm boring as hell for you, Duke. I know you like more piss and vinegar out of us, but I'm Washington in 6. I think Anthony Rendon's on his way to trying to get to $300 million instead of $200 million, and I had Max Scherzer staring back at me on my fantasy lineup all year, and there's something about him in Strasburg that seems more than what St. Louis has, and neither bullpen. Like Carlos Martinez certainly didn't show that he was an ace closing things out. So I'll take the Washington bats over the St. Louis bats and figure the pitching's a wash. I like Bladesy's call, Washington 6.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of.
Tomorrow night's a toss-up. I mean, did you see who's starting tomorrow night? It's Anibal Sanchez against Mikolas. So
yeah,
none of those big guys, right?
No. No. But they will, I think, and I too am taking Washington. I was going to go 5, but I just think St. Louis is just too gritty a team to be able to do it in that least amount. So I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying Washington in 6 as well. The other thing that needs to be added, and I know Bladesy made a good point of where things seem to be happening, falling into place for him. We also should remember that back in the spring or early in the season, I think I heard they were like 19-31. Or something like that, and something in that area.
That's what they were.
19-31, and the comment was that they essentially have been playing playoff baseball since May, sort of thing. So I mean, baseball is one of the sports in general. There's a lot of trends that you can identify and watch, especially teams coming into playoffs and stuff like that. If you're not on a roll, it seems like you get eliminated early, but. You know, with what's happened with Washington, with their season, and now, like you said, two times in a row here with the wild card, and now here in the divisional series, there just comes a point where you got to say this might be their year, and I think this is going to be their year to get to the World Series. I do think it's going to be a heck of a series. I'm not a big National League guy in terms of like pitchers batting and stuff, but I think this one's going to be a well played series. So
well, and since Bladesy opened the wound, I have to say that Dave Martinez did play for the Montreal Expos. So if we're going to continue with that soap opera, let's keep writing. Let's just say the former Expo takes the former Expos to the World Series like they should have been in 1993.
If you're not on the show
94.
next week, we'll
94.
know why.
94, sorry.
All right, let's move over.
It's 25th anniversary, McKenzie. It's even 25th. You know.
Sorry, I was getting mixed up with the Habs Stanley Cup year behind me, 93, 94.
Okay.
All right, gents, we move on to the American League. Anybody surprised that the Yankees swept that thing in 3? I mean, they took out a team that won over 100 games. Was you expecting a lot more from Minnesota, or is maybe that Yankee pitching staff that they thought they had could get them to a World Series starting to come together the way they envisioned? Bladesy, go ahead.
Not surprised they took them 3 straight. It was more of a kind of hopeful that they wouldn't. Minnesota had 101 wins. I don't know how the hell he did it. I don't know if you saw any of those games, but holy shit. Yeah. They got the record for home runs. I guess when you make your living hitting home runs and you go into a little slump, that's what happens, right? So, like I say, it's not a surprise. The Yankees have beat them 16 straight times, or they've lost, Minnesota Twins have lost 16 straight playoff games.
And
16 straight playoff games.
And 13 of them are the Yankees.
13, there you go. Yankees. Unreal. Like, man, oh man. Talk about who's your daddy. But, unfortunately, the Yankees, they've been sitting around all week now waiting for the winner of this Houston-Tampa, which can only bode well for them and getting their arms kind of rested up and things. But, let's just hope, because I do believe that Houston is the only team that can give them a run. Let's just hope Houston can hold on to this and give them the run for the money. But they've certainly... you got to give the Yankees credit. We've already said it. We don't have to.
You don't have to.
I know, but if you want to be fair, you have to. So they've played well, and but it's Minnesota. Let's not go too crazy. Let's see what happens when they take on. Let's hopefully Houston, because if it ends up being the Rays, I do believe it'll be the same thing. And unfortunately, but you can't be surprised, but I wouldn't go too much into it. It's like power hitters, they get in the slump and they don't score many runs. That's kind of the way it goes. So.
Yeah, especially in short series. Your pitching is shortened up. Guys that you may face in the regular season, you're not seeing much of them, if at all, when it gets into especially like a 5-game series and stuff like that. So. It does really show that, the long ball's good, and baseball had a lot of that this year. I think it's gone too far with the long ball to the point that it's not interesting anymore. I think when you look at some of the highlights of the past year, what really excited a lot of people was some of these like inside the park home runs, manufactured type runs and stuff. And I know they're really against stealing bases in MLB with the whole Moneyball concept and stuff. But stuff like that's what entertains people and things. And I think also if you bill yourself strictly on power, you're saying, well, I'm hoping to get there, but whatever. I think, you look at the Red Sox last year, the way they were structured, they certainly were capable of hitting home runs, and they did hit home runs in the preseason, but they were built mainly off of run production, producing runs, doubles, singles, and all that kind of thing. And you can see something similar happening with Washington this year. Not a big home run hitting team, but they're hitting enough, especially, last night was a case of it. But that's a team that manufactures runs. Houston is another team, which is why I think they're going to be very hard. And even Tampa, you have to give them props. So T-Mac, moving along to Tampa Bay and Houston. My big thing for this was going to be, is Tampa the answer to Moneyball? And you see, I thought, well, we better wait and see how the game unfolds, and if Houston jumps out, it kind of kills that thought. But you feel that it's still prevalent.
Yeah, I think win or lose. They've demonstrated that them and Oakland both, that you can be a competitive team without doing it, and it must kill those teams like the Jays that are now staring many years of a rebuild, or some of the other teams. Like how do these teams continue to do it? Shrewd trades, a lot of smart people there. I don't know. It's funny because I want Tampa Bay to do incredibly poorly so that the franchise can get moved. My motives are not honest. I'd love to see them playing in Montreal and then enjoy them even more. But no, I'm really impressed with and they've got just a great manager who I think before most of the other managers was willing to think outside of the box. And if your best pitcher needs to come in the 8th inning, because that's when the heart of the order is, you bring him in and you worry about the 9th when you get there, kind of thing.
like Tommy Pham pickups and Yandy Diaz, and they've struck gold more than they haven't. And it's, to me, it's kind of counter to what the Yankees have done, where Gio Urshela and these other ones have had career years, but it wasn't really from brilliance. It was just, these are just villains that have happened to strike gold, which is why I hope they shit the bed big time in the next round, and all the good luck that's come their way just is fleeting.
I'm a little more cruel where the Yankees is concerned. I mean, if they get knocked out, great. But I always like to. If the Red Sox aren't in it, and the Yankees are, I like to see the Yankees go to the World Series and get beaten a walk-off in Game 7. I just want to see them get butchered really bad, sort of thing. So it's kind of hard to offer up predictions because we don't know how that game's going to go. But we'll go on the assumption that Tampa's not going to be able to come that 4-run lead. Houston, New York, next round. Both of you thinking it's going to be Houston going? And if so, in how many?
Houston in 3.
Houston in 3. Fair enough.
I'll say 7, but I don't want to. Let's not jinx it here. We there was a 3-run lead last night that got overcome. So
well, I want to jinx it.
I don't want to jinx it.
I want to jinx it. I'd like to see Tampa get in.
Oh my God, dude. That would be the Yankees in 3.
Yeah. Well. But with that being said, with Tampa Bay, here's an interesting thing because obviously we've heard about the Red Sox and how their ownership is being adamant that they have to get under $208 million. With what happened in Los Angeles, seeing what's going on with Tampa Bay and Oakland, are we going to start seeing more of the big market teams, back off on salary for players and start investing into their minor systems, their scouting, all that kind of stuff? Because those teams, to be that competitive, they're doing something right. Is that the model? Do you guys see that as a model in baseball moving forward, or is this just kind of a blip on the screen?
Moneyball's been around for years, man.
Yes.
And it's only a few teams that are trying it, right? I mean, these big market teams are always going to be big market teams as long as they, want to spend the money. But you say about Tampa Bay, I didn't get a chance to answer, and I heard this the other day, and I honestly don't know where it came from, but I did hear that, Billy Beane even said, that my methods of Moneyball doesn't really work in the playoffs. And I think it's if you look, they're good enough to get to the playoffs, but because it's all based on and over a whole season, manufacturing runs and all this stuff, that it may not necessarily work in a short series. So I'm not saying it can't, but it works more on a 162 game season than it does in the playoffs. So if all these teams are going to go to that, well, if it's good enough for you to make the playoffs every year, but then get knocked out in the first round, well, great. But and that's good for Tampa and Oakland, but it's not good for the Yankees and the Red Sox. I don't think so. I mean, obviously they got a budget and they got to try to stay under a budget. It's not an unlimited pot for most of them, except maybe the Dodgers. I think they got an unlimited pot of money, but it's I don't think that's going to happen.
Right. I don't think any team or GM would choose Moneyball if the resources were available. I think they cherry pick the things about Moneyball when added to the big ticket players that would make it even better. But Moneyball is going to be there for those 6 to 8 teams at the bottom where that's the best way to do what Blady just described. Otherwise, you spend your money on those players when you can get them and hope that you can pick some of the analytical stuff that might make the difference for in some areas.
Right on. All right, gentlemen. So that wraps us up on MLB. Hearty discussion on that. So we're going to finish the show with a couple of what we call odds and ends. And last week there was a story that came out that, or actually is happening, that athletes in the NCAA, the college system of the United States, in which a bill got passed in California, there's now a push in Kentucky, a push in Minnesota, to bring legislation to the floor to be voted on for college athletes to make money, to be able to make money off endorsements. Obviously, the NCAA is not too pleased, and if you've read anything on it, they have really, are fighting against this. And as other states start to get involved with it, I think we're going to see a real battle going on. So we don't have to go long with this whole thing, but based on what you guys did look into it and all that, and of your own opinions, is it time now that college athletes get paid? Or are we looking at setting a bad precedent here? T-Mac, I'll let you go first on this one.
To me, it's long overdue. I mean, there's too much evidence of why it should happen. The actual details of how it works out, I'll leave that to some minds bigger than mine. To me, it's that and minor league sports, like the minor league baseball situation is another similar travesty that they can't put more money into the contracts of these players that are busting their asses to do something and are getting paid less than the minimum wage. So to me, it's long overdue, and the NCAA's time maybe has come to an end too. That would be a seismic move, but I think you could use this scenario possibly as just blow the whole thing up and come up with something new that allows for the players to get paid and maybe revolutionize the way college sports in general is run. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the counters to it, Bladesy, was the fact that if you allow that to happen, it kind of puts a division in the players, sort of like it is kind of in the pros, but it depends on your take on it. If the star players, the high recruits, they're probably going to be the ones that are going to reap the more benefit of it, and hence the smaller guy, the guy that, college is going to be his career, that's it, no chance of probably making the pros. It's going to cause a further divide that's already kind of there in a sense. Do you agree with that point, or are you with T-Mac and think they should get paid?
Oh, I think I'm exactly with him. Yeah, they should. It's definitely long overdue. I mean, there's so much money coming in, and they're not getting a cent of it. It's it's unbelievable, really. That some of these coaches are making millions of dollars, and these kids can't even get lunch money, for crying out loud. I mean, yes, they do get scholarships and books or whatever, bare minimums, but it is long overdue. But like you said, somebody smarter than us has got to come up with a way that it is fair for everybody is the thing, right? I mean, you can't have, I don't think, a star player for Alabama should be getting $1 million, whereas somebody else, it has to be some kind of fair system across that, that makes sure that everybody gets a piece. And, it doesn't have to be a big chunk of money. It doesn't have to be professional contracts or anything, but they should be getting something. They shouldn't have to starve. They shouldn't have to, do all that kind of thing when they're making, their colleges are making millions and millions of dollars off these athletes. So I don't have the answers how it should be done, but it definitely should be done. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen overnight. I guess it's 2023 or something. So they do have some time, but they're going to have to come to some kind of some kind of an agreement, because you can't have some states doing it and some not, obviously, and like T-Mac said, if the NCAA can't figure it out, then maybe there won't be an NCAA anymore. That may not be a bad thing in the long run.
No, it's definitely is catching a lot of attention down in the U.S. Obviously, I don't think we have quite that dilemma up here in Canadian college sports. I don't know if I could name you one famous athlete in Canadian college. I mean, just it's hard to believe that an imaginary
Laval has all the pros in football.
They have all the pros, Laval.
Yeah.
But here's the difference. I mean, Canadian universities, especially the Atlantic ones, can pay players. There are players that are coming to these schools that are getting money on the side for their room and board and things like that on top of their scholarship.
No. Not helping Atlantic University football right now.
No. I was speaking specifically to hockey. Our friend, our son is at UNB, and there's that's not the money isn't huge, but it's enough that it makes it that much easier for them, and if you're going to a program that's helping to raise the profile of that university. I mean, Canadian university coaches aren't making millions, don't get me wrong, but these schools obviously are making enough that they can throw a small little bone to these players that makes a difference.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, one of the arguments in having it or agreeing for it is the fact that they're not talking about taking anything out of the pot that comes to the universities in the States. That's not what they're talking about. Guys just being allowed to, like, if a local, and I guess car dealerships are getting a lot of attention nowadays based on this. But if something that's in your area, which you could say a car dealership, that the argument is those players, if they're asked to do that for that city, they should be allowed to do that because they're not taking anything from the pot, right? It's not like where the NCAA feels they're going to get hurt by this. I don't know. Obviously, there's, as you guys have said, you look more into it, you'll learn more. But I agree as well. Hard to believe we're all agreeing on a few things here tonight. But yes, they should get paid. And you hear some of the stories of how they, have to work part-time jobs, which isn't a bad thing. I don't think you should try to not get them to do stuff like that. But a lot of them aren't able to. And going to college, hand-to-mouth sort of mentality, I don't see how that's really a good thing. So anyway, I thought it was an interesting story, a bit of a sideline for us to kind of just chime in on. And as Bladesy said, 2023 before it's fully implemented, if it does happen to that. And so that's another 3-4 years away. So lot's going to happen between now and then. So we'll move off of that. And tonight we'll finish with our last subject that I wanted to talk about. And it comes from the game last Saturday night between the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs. A divisional game, the Atlantic Division. And at the time, Montreal is down. Toronto's up 4-1, I believe was the score. You guys can correct me, especially T-Mac. I'm sure he watched that game. 4-1 for Toronto. And there was an incident in which Kasperi Kapanen, not bad, Michael Link, for pronouncing a Finnish guy, breaks his stick. And hence, long story short, breaks the stick, throws the stick at, or he intends to hit the puck, but I think it hits the guy's skates or something like that. He gets called a penalty, which is rewarded with a penalty shot. Montreal scores part of the comeback in which they eventually win it in overtime. He says in the interview after the game that he wasn't really aware of the rule. And my question is, should pros know the rules, or do they really know the rules? Now, Bladesy, I thought this is a perfect thing for you to chime in on because you've, umpired in the minor leagues of MLB. You've had a lot of those guys who ended up in the major leagues. From your experience, and I'm sure it wouldn't be just in baseball, as we're seeing with Kapanen in hockey, he admitted he didn't know he wouldn't throw the stick. Is it more widespread than we think or know throughout professional sport? Maybe tell us an experience you had with that.
It would surprise you what little they know about the sport that they've played all their life. And, it's just, it really would shock you. And some of these guys just do not know, they're just like anybody. I mean, we grew up with all these guys that, come up with a rule, you only allowed, only 3 guys on the mound during a visit and, all this kind of stuff, right? I mean, somebody says something, they think it's a rule, never opened a rule book in their life. And I'm sure most of these hockey players, I'll bet you they haven't opened a rule book in their life. Baseball, I don't know. I can't give you an actual incident, I guess, but they really do not know. Now, managers and things, they kind of, obviously, they're the ones that figure it out over time. But as far as a player, 23-year-old kid, played hockey all his life, always been a superstar, always just went out there and played, and, was always the best player on his team. He never had any reason to know the rules. He didn't have to. He took the puck and he went down the ice and he scored. He knew that rule. Yeah. He knew it, but with that being said, dude, how fucking stupid can you be? How do you not know that's not the right thing to do? Did he think, in his infinite wisdom, he broke his stick and he said, this is how I'm going to defend this. I'll throw my shard of freaking titanium or whatever it is, that graphite at this guy. Man, you don't even have to know the rule to know you don't do that.
Yeah.
So, but no, it is widespread, Duke. I really do believe that these guys do not know half of what they just know how to play the game. But as far as, and this is a blanket statement, I'm sure there are those that do know some rules, but as a general rule, I don't think any of these pro athletes really know rules. Wasn't it a couple of years ago? It was a quarterback, I think. There was a tie game in the NFL before they went to the 10-minute, and it was very rare that we saw a tie game. And one of the pretty big name quarterbacks, might have been Cam Newton or somebody, said, or James, I don't even know who it was, but it was one of them said, I didn't even know we had tie games in the NFL. Like, what? Seriously, stuff like that. So, really, it's shocking, but it shouldn't be, because these guys, they just play.
Yeah. So, T-Mac, my question to you is this. I'm sure you're going to say, yes, Captain, I should have known this stuff. But how much accountability should Babcock and the coaching staff take on this? Is that something? Do they cover rules? I mean, do they have at least one day where they kind of go over things and maybe some new changes or something like that? You have to think that they discuss this at some point, don't they?
Part of me hopes not. Part of me hopes they're spending time on the power play instead of this. You hear about every year that they get the video from the NHL that tells them about how things are going to be called differently, like the stick check to the hands that now gets called, even if it's not really a slash. That's the stuff that a coach should be reminding his players of. But other than that, there shouldn't be a single second spent on the rules. It should be anything else that's going to help get a puck into the net. So no, I hope my Canadians coach or any other coach isn't spending any time. Okay, guys, today we're on page 14, subsection 3, 2A. The length of tape that you can put on a left-handed shooter's stick is... It's like your driver's test. When your kids are taking their driver's test and have to know what the speed limit is on a rural road, if it's a dog, like nobody needs to know that stuff. Your common sense should prevail. Just like your common sense tells you don't throw a broken stick at a puck.
Right.
That's it, especially this rule. Even if they had a morning that they were going over rules, can you imagine how far down the rule book you would have to go before you had to tell people you cannot throw a broken stick at them? What's next? You really can't bring a knife out there.
Yeah.
You can't stab the defenseman when he's on a breakaway. Man, oh man. That's definitely not a rule that they should have to go over. This is unreal that this guy actually said that.
Well,
it was lost in translation.
Oh man.
Well, the only silver lining that might be for Kapanen is that it's happened very early in the season, and if for some reason that lack of a point, which I guess is what it was added to costing them, was a point in the standings. Can you imagine if they missed the playoff by 1 point, or getting first place in the division or the conference, having home ice throughout that? I'm sure in Toronto, much like it is in Boston and New York where baseball is concerned, that probably going to be brought back to his attention and stuff. But maybe because it's so early, it doesn't. I don't know. I think so.
They're more upset with Babcock in Toronto than they are with Kapanen, if you can believe it.
Well, Babcock's he's given a 5-year deal to deliver, and he hasn't come close on that yet. So I think this is shit or get off the pot year for Babcock. If he doesn't win this year, he's gone.
When I sit in the dressing room with Leaf fans in Sunday morning hockey, it's amazing the amount of Babcock hate that comes out, and in the amount of he's still living off of whatever he did in Detroit, and anybody could have coached Team Canada too. There's not a lot of love for him, and it's an interesting. Just if I can toot a Canadians horn just a little bit, I've been really pleased with Julian, how he has changed. Here's a guy that basically ran. Who's the former Bruins guy that's with Dallas now? Seguin. That was during Julian's tenure, right? Mm-hmm. And had no time for the young guys. If they made a mistake, they were whatever. Habs have two raw rookies in Suzuki and Fleury out there. They make bonehead plays in the game against the Leafs, and they're right out for the next shift. Julian has changed. He's doing different things, and I think when I listen to the Leaf fans, Babcock hasn't. Babcock still is coaching the same way, making the same presumptions with respect to certain areas, and
my God, with all the firepower the Leafs have up front and a good goalie and hopefully a decent defense for their sake, although they're in a shootout with Tampa Bay tonight, 4-3 midway through the second. So I think Babcock will be remembered much more than Kapanen's bonehead play and some other stuff as the year goes on.
Right on. All right, gentlemen, what's going on in that ball game? Last things we'll check on. How's that going?
Still 4-1.
4-1, third inning?
Still 4-1. No. We're in the fourth.
In the fourth.
2 out, top 4. Tampa's got a runner on first base.
Okay. All right.
Cole's pitched 57 pitches, so he's still on track.
Can I say 2 words before we leave?
Sure.
Colin Kaepernick. How in the hell does this man not have the optics of it are so incredibly bad for about 20 franchises that this guy has not he was a good quarterback. He was you have the Jets starting guys that couldn't play in the Arena League. You have I just think this is a story that should be led with over and over again. How in a professional league is basically blackballed a player. This year especially with all of the injuries. Other years you could kind of hide behind, maybe, but it is so obvious. You either want your team to be better or you don't. And there's a guy sitting out there that's still young enough to come in. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick will play for 3 more teams before he retires. And Kaepernick won't see the field again. It is just an absolute. And I didn't want to start something late. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. But it blows my mind that such blatant collusion or whatever word you want to call it is happening. And it's not a bigger story.
No. Well, that can be an issue that we can talk about. I did a Duke's Daily on that a few weeks back, and I actually got some comments and a few followers as a result of it. It's a hot button topic, but you know what? That is the power of the NFL. That is how much clout that organization. I mean, they know it, and they know it arrogantly, and they don't care. They don't care, yeah. And you know what? Let's all be truthful. If we really cared, we'd stop watching. We're not stopped watching. We're still watching. And the ones that say that they stopped watching when it had happened at the time, when he was taking the knee, guess what? I'll bet you a good percentage of them guys are back watching, right? Yeah. And the NFL knows this. They understand their power. They understand the leverage they have in the sports world, and they wield it. Man, I'm telling you, that's why that story, concussion, is quite a remarkable. Like what that doctor accomplished is pretty amazing, actually, when you think about what he took on and was able to get done through it. But again, that can be something we can maybe talk about next week on the show and do a little more research on the whole thing. But I learned a lot in doing that daily on that and some of the resources that was suggested to me, right? So I kind of went into it. I mean, he is doing a lot of good work for the inner city of a lot of things, but I think, you know what, maybe you should have not went about the way. Your issue was correct and it was justifiable. I don't think you took the right route. And obviously, he's paying for it now. So, anyway, I'll shut up.
This happens a lot. This happens. I mean, we had this, I don't want to get off on a political rant or anything. So just briefly, we had this climate change bridge. They blocked the McDonald Bridge on Monday morning, right? And, whether or not you agree or disagree with what these people are trying to do as far as climate change, the way they went about it was totally wrong. Why block all these commuters trying to get across the bridge to go to work and actually make more pollution because they actually they either have to go drive farther to get around or idle there for a while. But anyway, I mean, in the end, at least they're doing something for what they believe is right. And here we sit, in front of our keyboard. So, there's a lot to be said with for people that do something, and we all probably got a better way of doing it. But anyway, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I understand where you're coming from with that. So, anyway, gentlemen, we are up to, 85 minutes. Wow.
It's just started, so good timing.
Just got started.
Pat 63, Giant 2.
All right. Well, the game that's starting in about 5 minutes, right?
No,
It
it
started.
Oh, it just
We
started.
just got
All
a
right.
first down already.
Well, that's good
Pat's
enough
right
reason.
midfield.
Well, that's
Yeah.
good enough reason for us to pull the plug. So, thanks again, gentlemen, for coming on. We will see you again next Tuesday. We'll try to get back in our regular time slot, and it looks like we have got our issues figured out. So, anyway, we will see you all again next week, Tuesday, with another edition of the Sunday Night Sports Guys. Everybody have yourself a great night. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.
Go Packers, go!